Let's read New Hampshire and Virginia, the first two landscapes by T.S. Eliot, which are poems I discussed this week on my Substack. And uh, I said there, and I'll say here, Eliot is maybe my favourite poet. These things are kind of hard to quantify in some ways. I think one of the best, most reliable measures is just by saying how often you read someone, And in that case, Eliot, Murray, C.K. Williams, um, and a half dozen others. Frankly, Henry Newbolt and Philip Larkin, actually big one there. There are many of these, and here these are some of the early poems that got me into him actually, because I first read Eliot, American British, born in St. Louis, um, and moved out 1889, I think he's born, something like that, and moved over just before the war, I think, in or maybe during the war, into London in the First World War, and made his name in Europe and naturalised a British citizen, and became definitional British poet of the 20th century, a modernist. I first came into contact with him through I think it's Penguin Book of English Verse, the one I still have. Many good poems in that really stuck in my mind since. And it had a few of his poems, and I think I was interested by it because I think it had a section of one of the quartets, and I liked that, but I found it interesting. Maybe I didn't like it, but I found landscapes easy to approach and very delightful, and and though they are metered, they're not strict free verse. At the same time, they are pretty loosey goosey. In traditional terms, they are, in classic modernist terms, revivals of other forms, ancient forms, alien forms, playing with things, and trying to. This is a big thing, think of one of the great moments of Eliot in Little Gidding is this about purifying the dialect of the tribe. You do that both in metre and in language. Eliot is the source of that idea of the dead metaphor. Beating a dead horse, well, that's a dead metaphor as much as anything. It is indeed beating a dead horse to use it. It's something which has no poetic power anymore. So these are important ideas for him. And these are approachable. And I think since, I'd say Little Gidding might be my favourite poem, and the quartets as a whole my favourite poem or series of poems, and love many other Eliot poems. But I think here you have some of the more approachable, easy things to read and to listen to in Eliot. And he explains why. He says to a translator that these are hard to translate. They may be the most untranslatable, I think he says, something like that, because they are nearly purely lyrical. He exaggerates, but what he means, I think, is that these are ones where he is interested in, to an incredible extent, with the music of the words. And there are things and themes going on between the five short poems. These are the first two, and I'll look at the others next week. But there are things and themes going on, but the big thing is that he's playing with sound, and he's playing also with meter and form, and the second one, for instance, is based on the Spanish copla form, which I don't pretend to be an expert on, but certainly there's things to do with, I think, like the way that groups of it's groups of four lines and sounds and things like that within a poem, and it helps create this kind of particular flow, no pun intended, river of the poem when we get there. But yeah, New Hampshire was certainly, I think, I'm not sure if all five were. I think New Hampshire and Virginia and maybe Usk were in that selection. I'll have to check, but I'll read them both. New Hampshire. Children's voices in the orchard, between the blossom and the fruit time. Golden head, crimson head, between the green tip and the root. Black wing, brown wing, hover over. 20 years and the spring is over. Today grieves and tomorrow grieves. Cover me over, lighten leaves. Golden head, black wing, cling, swing, spring, sing, swing up into the apple tree. Virginia. Red river, slow flow, heat is silence. No will is still as a river still. Will heat move only through the mockingbird heard once? Still hills wait, gates wait, purple trees, white trees wait, wait. Delay, decay, living, living, never moving, ever moving. Iron thoughts came with me and go with me. Red river, river, river. And these, in terms of the series of 5 poems, these are opening two, and I think there's probably something about placement here. There are probably more than one reason for the issue of placement. The At the end of Capan, number 5, the final words are, "The palaver is over." There is some thematic thing about age and time, which I think I might address when coming to the second group of three. But the placement here is not just as part of that wider theme and grouping, and I think there is some theme and grouping about time and age, but also about sound. The first gets the point of being the quickest and most lively, and the second, Virginia, is the slowest. We're pretty clear that it's, though there is river flowing, the river is still at the same time, and the hills are still, and things are waiting and delaying and decaying. And the sound, this is the thing about the lyricism, the sound experiment, is that the sound in New Hampshire is quick, and the sound in Virginia is slow. And of course, quick and slow are almost onomatopoeic, aren't they? They're by some sort of form of poetic synesthesia, they are quick. It's a hard, sharp, quick sound. Slow, a bit like susurrus is onomatopoeic. Slow. So let's draw. Let's write on this. Let's have a look. Children's voices in the orchard. This will make us think of his later Burnt Norton, and in fact, this poem, this mini poem, as it does, dealing with 20 years and spring is over time, as I say, there's a theme. This definitely connects it to Burnt Norton, and I don't know. I'm sure that may be something he even discussed. I don't know. But here, yeah, you have this idea of, you hear the children's voices in the orchard in a particular time between blossom and fruit time. You know, in early summer, late spring, golden head, crimson head. These are the apples between, perhaps, or are these the children? Interesting, isn't it? Golden head and crimson head, they must be the children, but the children are like apples. They are fruit themselves. Or, they are fruiting, indeed. Between the green tip and the root, they too are between, in a process of growing. Blackwing, brownwing hover over. 20 years and spring is over. Now they are like birds. Today grieves, tomorrow grieves, cover me over, lighten leaves. Golden head, blackwing. That's obviously taking from there. Black hair, presumably. Oh, sorry, golden hair. Blackwing, brownwing, is that like a bird or is that like a child? Is that like a black head of hair? Cling, swing, spring, sing, swing up into the apple tree. The speed of those words, the rhymes, the 5 rhymes, swing being repeated, is meant to be indicative of that kind of speed of them trying to get up into the apple tree. But it's also of both the speed of youth and the liveliness of youth, and of the speed in which the time goes. Hover over 20 years and the spring is over. Today grieves, tomorrow grieves. And here you have a rhyme here, obviously. But here, this very lovely, one of my favourite and most memorable, I think, couplets in Eliot. Today grieves, tomorrow grieves, cover me over, lighten leaves. Yeah, so I think we have this obvious set. This is spring poem, and it's a childhood poem, and it's about the speed and delight and freshness of youth and of the growing crop. The children themselves are between the blossom and the fruit time, at some level. I guess as in they are I suppose, does that mean they're growing? I guess from fertilization up to maturity, uh, and is very slightly poignant or even morose, which is not uncommon in Eliot. Eliot so often deals with this issue of time passing. It's inescapable uh, from from the quartets, most obviously, which is a pervasive theme. But yeah, go and read Ash Wednesday about the Magi seeing a birth and a kind of death. Go and read Hollow Men and the kind and indeed the Wasteland, the sense of impending collapse, decay, doom of things. It's a common thing, whether it's personal or cultural for Eliot. And here he is perhaps mourning the loss of youth. It's not clear if it's mourning or simply reminiscing, being nostalgic. But we see that repetition, quick rhyme, short lines. Generally speaking, these are short lines, and they're short lines with a lot of not all, but a lot of consonantal hard endings. Orchard, time, head, root, over, grieves, leaves. That is a softer sound, but then the rhyme makes it quite strong. Wing, swing, sing. And then interestingly, we end up, tree comes back to leaves perhaps, and there are a few other internal rhymes as we go, or assonances. It's interesting. We end on something quite a cling, swing, spring, sing, swing up into the apple tree. Virginia has, a different thing going on. You'll see that there are more indefinite or soft endings. River, silence, river, move, hills, trees, me, river. Now you've got some ings, living, moving. You've got wait, bird, but even here, just line endings are softer, aren't they? You don't have you don't have a progression of 6 close rhymes, which is an almost absurd number, really. Now, an interesting thing here, just to think about meter for a second, is here. I'm going to say that these are dactyls. I stress, unstress, which I red river. Now it could be that you're actually talking about maybe you want to emphasise the river as well, riv. But I think there's a reasonable argument even that red river, that you've got 2 softish ones. If it is, it could be stress, soft. But if so, this is really only a half stress, isn't it? It's this hard, big red, and then it fades away. River, slow flow, heat is silence. No will is still as a river still. Now we do have a lot of internal rhymes, certainly. Slow flow. We have alliterations. Red river. And repetition, river here. Will heat move? Obviously, well, back with all those 4. Will heat move through the mockingbird herd? Bird herd. Once. Still hills. Rhyme. Wait, gates wait. And white is an assonance. I'll just mark that with an assonance there. Trees wait, delay, decay. Living and moving. Living, never moving, ever moving. The living and the movings are assonant and ever, never rhyming. Iron thoughts come with me. So living, never moving, ever moving. Iron thoughts. Iron is, as I say, a synesthetic onomatopoeia, isn't it? It's the real feel of something strong. Something the thoughts are with him and stay with him. And the river, red river. They keep flowing. Now, here's one thing: is the river itself is not dead or static. The trees are on the hills, and they delay and decay certainly. But though we say that the river, living, living, never moving, ever moving, it's slow, slow flow heat. No will is still as a river still, but somehow it does keep moving, and the thoughts come and go, and the river, river, river. We are being pulled along slowly through these. Um, yeah, think about what word you'd use for a river or water that you want to talk about flowing quickly. Certainly, you think of gush, flash, and in terms of names for the geography itself, beck, a tinkling beck or tinkling brook. You know, that's those are and there is the use of those hard sounds or a short sound, gush, which is onomatopoeic as well, shh, like the water flowing quickly, or beck, or yeah, or brook. Though the hard that it seems like something sharp and small, whereas at the red as well. Here's the Virginia clay being washed in, and here that the picture and feel is of a silted up, slow beast. And I mean, think here, um, the river is a god. You know that we're talking about. Again, we might look particularly amongst the quartets, of which there are only four, so our five will not match up to them neatly. And it's not as if water only appears in the dry salvages, but the other obvious something like well, at least part four of the wasteland. Um, it doesn't fit quite as well. But here, this idea of the river and water, death by water in the wasteland, dry salvages in the quartets. This idea of the relentlessness of water and in some cases of a slow brown god, etc. We've got a similar thing here, and we use language and we use meter. The sounds, that hard, as I say, the hard red, the soft river. V is a much softer consonant than D. So yeah, it's it that I think they're both effectively lyrical, but as I begin to suggest, there are things going on that are not just he thought, how would you make something sound like a river? Well, you have lots of soft and slow and quite long syllables. Slow, slow, slow. You can't make it if you say it very quickly. It doesn't sound right. Slow and lots of soft endings, as I say. And in most cases, this is a funny one here in terms of punctuation. If poetry per Eliot is a form of punctuation, then here this is punctuated as English in terms of English prose with the enjambment here. For instance, they're creating that poetic punctuation, but always between the blossom time and the fruit time, and then colon starting list or kind of zoom in, golden head, crimson head, etc., and punctuation throughout, even a semicolon. Here, like you've got something, for instance, where you say red river. You've got commas there. Slow flow heat is silence. No will is still as a river still. Will heat move only through the mockingbird heard once? You've got these they're not long sentences. That's an exaggeration, but complete unpunctuated. That first long sentence, either the second sentence, slow flow heat is silence. It's very. In fact, if you go before that, you obviously have you're starting here for the sentence. It's a very long sentence of long syllables and soft sounds. And so, yeah, you have youth speeding quickly like the apple tree, that moment that you capture between blossom time and fruit time, and the birds in the orchard and the apples growing on the trees actually being like children, and vice versa. The children remind you of the birds and of the apples. And you have the speed, hard, short syllables, and then in Virginia, the opposite. So yes, we've got this experiment. But the experiment is doing more than just experimenting, hence why I say I think he undersells himself. And partly because He's not just kind of putting random words together to create these. He's not kind of saying, oh, well, what would happen if I use lots of long syllables and soft sounds with very little punctuation, and relying incredibly heavily on enjambment to create any kind of punctuation. And it doesn't matter what the words are, Lorem Ipsum. Here instead, he is trying to depict a river, and the fact that you got this landscape. It's something rarely for Eliot is there this incredibly strong. I know they're called landscapes. This incredibly strong evocation and description at this length. That you do get some very famous moments. I'm actually thinking mostly of urban scenes are some of the most famous in the wasteland, but also of his winter trip. Midwinter, spring, to Little Gidding, and walking out in the fields in East Coker. But there is something else going on here other than the evocation. Living, living, never moving, ever moving. Iron thoughts come with me. At this point, we suddenly get the narrator, Eliot, really, coming in and go with me. The continual movement of time, slow but relentless, which does connect up here, doesn't it? It does connect to this idea of grief, of the loss of childhood. Sorry about that, just had OneNote decide to restart itself on me. But yeah, the grief of the loss of childhood, and now the relentless movement of time. And now we're going to be going into a set of other passages which will end back up in New England. He's going to Britain now, to Wales and to Scotland, and to different kinds of landscapes altogether that we haven't seen before returning to Massachusetts in the end. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I'd love to hear any of your thoughts on Landscapes by T.S. Eliot, particularly these first two, and I will see you next time.